Thank you, Dinesh. Each of our speakers will now each take 8 minutes to respond to the other two gentlemen. We'll begin again with Mr. Hitchens.
Wait, I'm so sorry. It says here I have 4 minutes to cross-examine.
Excuse me.
4 for each of us.
Yes.
4 for each.
Well, you have 4 for each, so you can use them however you like. You can do 4 for 4. You can spend 6 on Dinesh.
If I'm supposed to
and 2 on
cross-examine, I should do that rather
4
than
and 4.
rebut. Don't think I've run out of things to say.
No.
I'm just recovering from the amount of applause for Christianity I just heard from the pews. Perhaps it was just making nice. I don't know. Why don't I do a bit of cross-examination and see how it goes? Someone will have to be a timekeeper.
Right here,
and I'm told my first is to Dennis. And I think I'll begin by asking him if he would care to specify for me the secular roots of anti-Semitism and fascism, the founding movement of totalitarianism. I'm taking you up on your point about secular totalitarianism being as bad as religious.
Given that there was
the original totalitarian movement, the movement that invented the term in the 20th century, fascism, is, if you look at any history, I'll just make this observation, any history of the mid-20th century, take out the word fascism, put in the Catholic right wing, nothing changes, right? Whether it's the history of Spain or Croatia or Hungary. And I want to know where the secular roots of anti-Semitism and fascism are, in your opinion.
Yeah. Well,
actually, I'd rather have evidence than opinion for a change.
I'm sorry, what was that? I didn't hear the last sentence before that. All right, doesn't matter. The question is not fully honest, and not that you're being dishonest, and I'm very careful because I have great respect for so much of what you say.
Thank you.
But I'll tell you why it's not an honest question. It's because it's somewhat of a non sequitur. There was no secularism until the philosophes and until the 18th century in Western Europe. So to ask what are the secular roots of a hatred that goes back 3,000 years is to ask it's like asking what are the secular roots of I don't know, what are the religious roots of Henry Ford's Model T. I mean, one has nothing to do with the other. However, today
you did say that this was a secular movement.
I did say what was a
secular
secular
movement. You said that fascism and Nazism were secular.
Yes, they are indeed. I said that. I said communism and Nazism. I said communism and Nazism.
Trying to get you to acknowledge the utter falsity of what you'd said.
The what of what I said? There's a problem with the sound back here. I have succeeded
also in getting you to say that it is utterly false. The origins of the organizing principle of that movement, Jew-hating, are not secular.
You're absolutely right. They are religious because
they are in the religion that half the people in this room just applaud.
Well, then give me the secular roots of the Ten Commandments. It's just as silly a question. There is no secular roots when there is no secularism. But today in America, almost all the anti-Semitism comes from the secular left. So it's a very poor argument on your where there is religion in America and there is secularism. The anti-Semitism is overwhelmingly, like at UC Irvine next week, from the secular left.
Now, I'm just very sorry to have to tell you that I think that now you may have perhaps exhausted the extreme tolerance for other people's religions that, as the Catholic anti-Semitism that I've just been specifying in this room. Anyone who doesn't know where anti-Semitism is being pumped out in the modern world, in this room, I'd be very surprised if it isn't pretty well understood that the revival of the protocols of the Elders of Zion comes from the Hamas website.
Yes, of course it does.
Comes from another monotheism.
They're not in the United States.
Another
they're in the Middle
monotheism
East.
that correctly claims kinship with Christianity and Judaism. It's the origins of anti-Semitism are entirely in other monotheisms. I mean, if anyone doesn't know that,
yes, they are. They are.
A single text of the secular left that licenses anti-Semitism, I should be very surprised. And I challenge you to do so.
Well, sure, I'll be happy.
But I would invite you to stop exculpating.
I'm not
at the very least, to
exculpating.
stop making excuses for the actual practitioners of anti-Semitism, the Catholic and Islamic right wing.
I wrote a book. I wrote a book on
my
book on anti-Semitism is available, and it has an entire chapter on the Christian roots and the Muslim roots of anti-Semitism.
Well, why did you mention that instead of slandering secularists who are not guilty of this charge?
Why did I mention what? It's terrible.
Why did you not mention the religious roots of this filthy prejudice instead of slandering secularists who aren't guilty of it? Why waste your time and hours in
First
that
of
way?
all, I didn't even mention anti-Semitism. You did. So why? You can't ask me why I didn't mention what you're raising.
I appeal to you, ladies and gentlemen. That was a very evasive series of answers. Very disappointing performance. I think 4 minutes cross-examination. Now, for Dinesh, do I get to go to
Yes,
Dinesh now?
please, another
Dinesh you will perhaps not be so evasive when I ask him. He kept saying he was a Christian. What he meant to say was he was a Roman Catholic. There are lots of ways of being Christian. For example, to take the nonsensical statements made by Mr. Prager earlier about, for example, gender equality or global warming. These are the sort of things you get from Quakers and Unitarians and Methodists and Anglicans, as much as you do from secularists. There are many, many ways of being Christian, but the Pope says there's only one true way of being one. Ratzinger says there's only one true church, only one church that's divinely inspired, that has real authority, and it's the Roman Catholic Church. Is your view also the view of His Holiness?
I'm not sure. Well, I
What a
say this
disappointing
because,
reply.
well, I'll be honest with you. I think you're jumping a little bit here into describing my views, which I've written about quite openly. I certainly am raised Catholic. I've drawn in my work on the intellectual tradition. On the other hand, I'm married to an evangelical Christian, and in my work and in my life, I try to combine elements of the Catholic intellectual tradition with some of the experiential, faith-based relationship with God elements that I draw from evangelical Christianity. So quite openly, I identify myself with what C.S. Lewis called mere Christianity. That's not an evasion. That's where I am.
Okay, but you'll admit that for me, I mean, who does say to anyone who asks exactly what he thinks, and when I say I'm an atheist, you can pretty much tell what I'm going to say and what I'm going to stand by. It's disappointing every time I ask a religious person to find that they're shopping from some clerical cafeteria. I like this bit, I don't like that bit. To be a Roman Catholic is supposed to mean that you say that all other forms of religion are false.
First of all, I think that's flatly untrue, Christopher.
It's worth pointing out. That is what Holy Mother Church actually says. I'm saying this for this reason. There's a lot of soft ecumenicism in the air tonight, and there's a lot of soft ecumenicism in the audience tonight. I just feel a few tough distinctions are worth making.
Well, let's make them.
People who really take their church seriously, particularly Holy Mother Church, say, it's a pity. You're wasting your time. Your religion is worthless to you. It's not going to get you to heaven. It's not going to redeem you. It's not going to save you. There's only one way of doing that. Now, that surely has to be counted also as among the beliefs that we're discussing.
Well, first of all...
Wouldn't you say yes to that?
Well, you made a number of statements. Look, it is in some senses true that all religions, and by the way, this is no less true of atheism or secularism, claim an exclusive claim to truth. If atheism is true, no religion can possibly be true.
That's quite right.
So atheism in that sense is just as parochial in asserting the falsity of every competing faith. Second, Christianity is probably the only religion that declares another religion to be completely true, and that is Judaism. Christianity is built, you might say, on the foundation of Judaism and intends to incorporate it unedited, the whole thing. Third, even within Catholicism, there is something that actually ranks higher than the Pope and higher than all the encyclicals, and that is the inner voice of conscience. This is asserted in numerous ways, but it is a doctrinal teaching that conscience, the little referee, what Adam Smith called the impartial spectator inside of us, that is the ultimate authority.
Not wanting to be accused of soft moderating, and we need to pass the conversation on to Mr. Prager, please.
All right.
I'm sorry.
It would be better to do rebuttals, wouldn't it?
It would.
Could you speak a bit louder?
Let's try this, and then we'll switch
Wouldn't
after
rebuttals
this.
have been a lot better?
Back and forth.
Okay.
Let's
Well, I think we should keep the format.
I think keep the format now, and we can regroup after.
Yeah, then we could do
Now,
it. I agree that just allowing rebuttals for a longer time
Okay.
afterwards rather than
Let's do that. Let's stick with
cross-examination.
this, and then next round we'll play
Yes,
loose.
it reminds me too much of lawyers in any event, and
Our congressional hearings.
Is it my turn?